There is so much going on in the residential technology space, and much of it is driven by new innovations in AI and sensor based technologies. I am so excited to welcome Justin McKinney, CEO and co founder, and Matthew Wooten, CTO and co founder of Ivani, a technology company based on occupancy sensing as a service. Our research shows that consumers keep adding connected devices to their homes. Now, the average internet household has 16 connected devices, and 53% of households say they value technology more than they did before the pandemic. Likewise, consumers are looking at apartments and rental properties and really expecting technology enhancements in their lifestyles. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining and for the support from Ivani for Parks Associates Research and Events. I would really love to learn more about what occupancy sensing as a service means and talk to you a little bit about some of the consumer trends you're seeing. So, Matt, let's start with you with a brief introduction of your role, and then if you can, help us understand what exactly we are talking about when we say occupancy sensing as a service.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm Matt Wooten, CTO and co-founder of Ivani. I have a background in technology development and innovation, have a bunch of patents, but my sort of role is finding interesting ways of taking system level concepts, breaking them down, and turning it into something that users want and desire to use. So occupancy sensing as a service is the idea that as you have these large groups of IoT devices that talk to one another, human beings disturb communications between them. We have a piece of technology that analyzes that and turns that into effectively sensor data, creating a sensorless sensor, which can then, via API, make occupancy data available to other services for different use cases, such as home security, HVAC optimization, utilities knowing whether someone's home or not. Basically, anything you could do with a sensor for people, whether they're there or not, you can do simply via adding software to these existing IoT platforms, just leveraging the wireless communications between those devices.
Amazing. Sensorless sensors. So great explanation there. Thank you for that. Justin, let's go ahead and see if you can introduce yourself and maybe share some of the trends that you're seeing in the past few years in the smart home market.
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. I'm Justin McKinney. I'm a CEO and co-founder of Ivani. Matt and I and two other co-founders started Ivani back in 2014, and we've pivoted a couple times early on, but found our way with regards to what Matt was talking about with network presence sensing and really working our way into that sensing as a service phase and vertical. So with that said, just kind of looking at some of the industry trends and consumer trends over the last few years, I think one of the things that has kind of defined our path, not just Ivani's path, but smart home in general, is just the overall volume of devices. So many devices that are going into consumers' homes. Many are on the same network, but many more are not. And I think that in itself has kind of caused little consumer frustration, but I think it seems like the industry in general is seeing that frustration and addressing it through different means. But with that said, kind of looking forward, we think that security, the lighting area, the arena, lighting control, and probably the sleeper vertical that we're very excited about to see for not only our personal families and so forth, but just the industry in general is aging in place and trying to keep our loved ones at home longer with dignity and privacy.
Yeah, and that's a huge area that we cover here at Parks Associates as part of an intersecting spot with the smart home space, and surely a huge area to come as well as consumers, our age, who will continue to age, look to technology to, maintain their independence at home, and also caregivers as well. So it's really amazing, the technologies that are coming out with sensors. Tell me, if you could, Matt, a little bit more about the technology and the impact that it's having. What are some of these specific things that it is enabling that is so attractive to consumers, or even any of the players who might be adding specific devices to their environments?
Yeah, so for us, right, we operate as a piece of technology that lives on partner devices. And so there's a real excitement around being able to basically deploy a home security solution as a firmware update to an existing ecosystem. So, one of our partners may have, installed with, sorry, may have sold, many millions of devices to consumers, right? They're doing whatever job they're doing, their light bulbs, their switches, their outlets, something of that nature. And users continue to expect more functionality out of them. And there's cloud support, all of those things. With a piece of firmware that we bring to the party, right? We add network presence sensing technology, and suddenly they have these devices acting as sensors, even though they're switches, outlets, light bulbs, etc. And so they can look at that as a means of monetizing their existing install base. And users get to say, hey, I have a home security solution that, I just need to press a button and get it going. And so that's a really kind of cool feature that we've seen in, various different deployments and things we've done with our partners is, hey, these devices were never expected to do this thing. There's this invisible sensor that's basically just magic to them. But that's the power of and beauty of technology, which can be applied to existing things, given the power of AI, machine learning, and various algorithmic advancements that have taken place over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. And it speaks a little towards the whole home play that we've been talking about, and many in the industry have for decades. And Justin, you alluded to it a little bit earlier, in the sense of integration and interoperability between products, that enables different experiences to happen. Is there anything specific about the advancements that are taking place with the technology that are really creating big jumps in terms of the applications? And is the pandemic just really been a huge catalyst in the sense of being able to come up with new ideas to roll out, or has it been challenging giving some supply chain issues? I mean, there's a lot of different barriers there along the hardware side.
Well, I think the pandemic has a silver lining in the fact that consumers have had a chance to um, be at home a lot more, and therefore better understand their needs, their wants, and then vote with their pocketbook when it comes to bringing in whatever types of devices that they're trying to address needs with. And so, with that said, the role of technology, the last few years, large tech companies really seem to have somewhat led the way in creating the space, making consumers comfortable with, smart home tech. That said, they've really sort of been siloed in many respects. And so I think that siloing effect has, again, as mentioned earlier, has kind of created some frustrations. But with that, again, the tech companies in general seem to be listening and addressing that through initiatives like Matter. I think that's going to be a big deal for consumers and the smart home industry in general. And so the more we can have interoperability, the more that tends to offer up all kinds of opportunities for everyone, for consumers, for IoT manufacturers, software developers, and so forth. And so, we're right in there, being able to offer all kinds of stacked applications on top of existing hardware, as Matt was talking about. And so we're very excited for this moment in time in smart home, because we see ourselves playing a major role moving forward.
Yeah, it is an exciting time to be in the industry, and interoperability is something that we've looked at Parks Associates for decades, as the smart home has grown up, and new technologies have enabled all sorts of new things. So that Matter initiative really is a great one. It's quite a tall order, but that integration will enable all sorts of services in the future, and that's where I think this new era of services that is based off of the foundation of technology, including AI and machine learning and predictive and proactive analytics, is where it's coming in the future, from a lot of our perspective, and lots of players, as you noted, who will be in the party to serve the consumer. That does bring us to talk a little bit about the future. There's the near-term future, which is still consumers and businesses adjusting to dramatic changes in pretty much everything, I think, and increased costs everywhere, from gas to food to how much you might have to pay people. So let me ask you, I'll start with you, Matt, and looking at maybe a little bit longer out, 3 to 5 years out, where do you see the smart home headed, and what maybe are some of the biggest things that you think will be impacting the growth of the market?
So I see the sort of smart home space in general being one where users are still, trying to find those particular use cases that mean the most to them, and want to be able to trial them without putting huge amounts of investment into seeing how they play out. Initiatives like Matter make it much easier for different platforms to talk to one another via API, provide those services, and see how that works. We see the proliferation of platforms such as Zigbee, Z-Wave, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, right? They exist today, and these devices, consumers will choose their platform of choice, and then we have our sensing as a service technology that can layer on top of that, add intelligence, and then make it available via API through things such as Matter, to allow for different smart home experiences for people to try them out, get used to them. And then honestly, once you've tried it, it's really, really hard to get away from it. So, we see it as the future really is lacking data to act on. And the next 3 to 5 years is going to be adding more and more data, occupancy, geofencing, take your pick, right? And that data to act on is going to feed a whole new era of services and platforms and technologies, some of which we can foresee today, a lot of which we'll see what consumers want, and it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out over time.
Yeah, absolutely, and we love tracking those future services, and asking consumers, what's driving their purchases and desire for technology. Justin, let's hear what you think, and maybe if you have any comments on the insurance industry in the future play here,
Yeah.
if there's anything there you want to comment on, because I think that might tie in here really well.
Absolutely. I think Matt nailed it on the head, with regards to, all of these platforms are out there, and the whatever ends up being the platform of choice for the consumer. Regardless of what that is, I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to have applications that can address multiple use cases as the consumer grows. So what we're going to be seeing in the future, honestly, it's going to be something that we physically can't see. And that's where I think, companies like ours, Ivani, will really play that role with sensing as a service, in the fact that we'll be behind the scenes on existing hardware and essentially dematerializing spaces, so that you're not having to have an additional sensor for every single application. Whether that's lighting control, or again, looking at aging in place, or security, or just home analytics, those types of things. And so All of those things are different applications that can grow with the consumer as time goes on, whether it's a short-term play or, again, as we mentioned earlier, kind of the aging in place scenario where you're looking at, okay, you know what, in 10 years, 15 years, I'm still using those same devices, but just in a different way. And they are doubling, tripling the actual use cases that those devices can be used for. So when it comes to insurance, there are all kinds of opportunities, especially when it comes to understanding the occupancy of spaces, whether it's your living room or entryway or kitchen, whatever the case may be. There are many opportunities to lower insurance costs and feed this data to actuarial tables so that it can help insurance companies basically lower the cost for their insured. So I think we're just really at the precipice of this whole thing, and there's so many opportunities to take it down all kinds of rabbit holes as we go forward in a good way to benefit the consumer. So
Yeah, absolutely. And, despite the fact that we've been studying these markets for almost 40 years, I would agree that we are in some very beginning stages still with, where this is going to take us. And the sheer volume of devices getting into the home on the insurance play is really a critical piece of their proof of how technology really can mitigate risk, and then how they can tie that into that whole business model that is on the insurance side quite complex. So many great applications coming, and you all are certainly helping to lead the way in innovation. Again, I appreciate your time, Justin and Matt, joining me today, and thank you for your support of Parks Associates Research and Events, and look forward to seeing you in person soon.
Thanks, Elizabeth. We really look forward to the Connections event, seeing customers, meeting new people, and going from there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.